Hello and welcome to Camp, a field guide for a student's best summer yet. I'm Scott Zagalak.
And I'm Katie Vautier, and we are school services coordinators at Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago.
And before we get into our presentation, let's give you a little information about our backgrounds.
So, Scott taught at Chicago Public Schools for 10 years in grades kindergarten spanning all the way through 8th grade. He made the switch over to the hospital in 2016.
Yes, and I've known Katie for the past 6 years, since 2014. Obviously, we have a lot of history if you take a look at all those pictures. So 6 years ago, Katie student taught in my classroom before joining the team and then going on to teach 5th grade and 3rd grade. Then a little later, she joined me here at the hospital on the school services team. But I have to say, Katie is an incredible teacher that continually inspires myself and her students.
Ditto, Scott, ditto. So now, as you can see from all of these pictures, Scott and I love to dress up. We're dressed up here today, and whether it's here in the hospital or back in our old respective classrooms, we've really found that if we get fully into a theme and we're enthusiastic and having fun with it, that really translates to our students, right? They're more excited, and really what we want to do is make learning memorable and fun, and we've found that getting full in, dressing up, going all out, that's what makes learning amazing.
Yes. All right, let's get into our presentation. So let's take a look at our agenda today. So first, we're going to talk about why we create a summer camp, and then, of course, the importance of creative summer learning. Then Katie and I will share our tips and tools how you can create a summer camp experience at your own facility. We will then take a closer look at one of our most popular weeks, STEM Week, with one of our most popular activities, and then we will wrap it up. All right, let's move on and find out why create a summer camp, Katie?
Let's do it. So there are many reasons to create a summer camp. First of all, schools are out on summer break, right? And as teachers here in the hospital, it's a tough sell to go into a room and say, hey, I'm a teacher, do you want to do some schoolwork? Typically, students are not enthused. They're not excited to do schoolwork with us, right? Their teachers aren't sending any work. So how do we still keep this fun and engaging for them? How do we keep their minds active? Summer camp, right? Then also, in regular times, more siblings come to visit. However, this past summer, because of the pandemic, right, we weren't able to have siblings visit, and we adapted. Also, if students weren't in the hospital, they would probably be doing some kind of summer programming, whether that be a camp or a park district program, right? So we still want to give them that programming while they're here. And then finally, Scott and I did a lot of research, and summer camps for hospitalized students do actually exist. However, we found that those camps were often a week at a time, so only 1 week over the whole span of the summer. They were either specific to a diagnosis or a set of diagnoses. They typically didn't extend to siblings, so only that one child in the family would be able to go to that camp. Or they were contracted out to other organizations. So a company would come in and deliver the camp, but they didn't have a pre-existing relationship with those patients, students, or families.
And that is key.
Exactly. So Scott and I kind of took all of those items and thought, okay, how can we create this into our own?
Yes, so that leads us into the importance of summer camp. So first of all, summer camp motivates and engages students in a fun, creative way. I have to tell you, it makes an unplanned hospital visit much more bearable. It also activates students' minds to help them avoid that infamous summer slip that we as teachers notice during the summertime.
Absolutely.
Yes. It also exposes students to a variety of themed topics. Now, when we plan our summer camp, we'll talk about our themes, but we try to find themes that will be of interest to everyone, of kids of all ages. And I have to say that we pick such great themes that some kids actually tell us they don't want to be discharged because they want to know what the theme is next week and stay for it. Which is a huge compliment, and it's also a lot of fun for us. Also, summer camps foster socialization among inpatient students of all ages. It also provides a normal experience in which to connect with non-hospitalized peers. Now, this is something that was affected during the pandemic. We thought, uh-oh, there goes the socialization piece because we aren't able to open our classroom, which we'll talk a little bit later. But what we did notice is that kids would pass each other in the hallways and they would still talk about the different projects that they did at camp that week. So it did continue to lead to that socialization portion, which was huge. We also include siblings and oftentimes parents too. Something we noticed during the pandemic was that parents became more involved because this was extremely important. During this past summer, there were so many services that were cut back from students and from patients. They weren't allowed to have creative art therapies in the beginning. Actually, school services and camp was one of the first services that was allowed to re-enter the students' rooms and bring some of that fun learning. So that was huge. So parents really participated, and although siblings weren't here, we did notice that a lot of patients took their projects that they did with us at camp, took them home and talked to their peers and their siblings about it, and they tried to recreate them at home. So that piece with the siblings and parents was still evident even during the pandemic. Also, the importance of summer camp, it promotes participation among medical and multidisciplinary teams. It provides that non-clinical talking point for doctors. So when a physician enters a room, they don't have to ask how they're feeling on a scale from 1 to 10, what's your pain? They can say, hey, what did you do at camp today? And it's also a great way for the patients to interact with the doctors. One student actually took a game, a Triceratops, during Dino Week and set up a scoreboard. And she had all the nurses and doctors play it every time they entered and exited her room and kept a score on who had the highest score. It was incredible
really
to see that participation.
The doctors got very into it too, trying to beat the other one and see who won at the end of the day. So it really made that relationship a lot more fun and easygoing amongst patient to doctor.
Yes, and finally, it also encourages mobility. So we're getting students up and moving around the classroom and then also around their room. So that's some of the reasons why we feel that summer camp is important here at our facility.
Exactly, and we really found that last summer with the pandemic, camp was more important than ever, right? We mentioned siblings weren't able to come. There were heavy visitor restrictions. Most of the summer, only one parent was allowed at the bedside. We couldn't have outside community organizations, and even a lot of those other services, like Scott mentioned, weren't allowed to go in the rooms. So the students this summer were desperate for interaction, desperate for some kind of engagement. So camp was really crucial to provide that.
Yes, definitely. All right, so we talked a little bit about the why and the importance, but let's take at some of our stats. All right, here at Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital, we have a total of 364 beds. Now, to break down our stats, you're seeing a couple different numbers, but let me explain them to you. The number of encounters that you see, those are our interactions with patients. So sometimes we may have more than one interaction with the same patient. But if you skip to the next column, which is total camper service, that is actually a combination of patient service and sibling service. Now, you'll see that our encounters from every year, from 2018 to 2019, increased. They dropped a little bit in 2020, only due to the pandemic. But what you may notice if you take a closer look is that for patients serviced, in 2019, we had 386. In 2020, we actually upped that to 400 patients, which is incredible because camp during 2020 was strictly bedside. And I can explain the reason for that is in 2019 and 2018, we actually opened the classroom for students to come down. That's where our main cabin is located. But for those students in isolation, we would bring camp to them bedside. So we were depending on those students who weren't in isolation to come down on their own, either with the nurses' support or their parents. And sometimes students forgot what time it was, weren't able to make it.
They got busy, they had a procedure.
Exactly. So this year, in 2020, we actually went from room to room. So we ended up hitting more of our actual patient population, which was incredible. And our numbers are still great despite not having any siblings.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right, so you've seen a little bit about our numbers. Now let's take a look at some of our tips and tools on how to create a summer camp experience at your own facility.
All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do, we have a couple initial questions that you're going to want to ask yourselves, okay? So the first initial question is, when do most schools in your area break for summer? Here in Chicagoland, it's about mid-June and they resume in early August, okay? The next question you'll want to consider is, how many days and weeks are feasible for your camp? So a couple of things come into play here. Think about that summer break time. Think about how your role looks over the summer. Are you usually busy? Do you kind of absorb other roles? Think of all those things. For us, summer is usually pretty slow, so we make our camp the whole 8 weeks. In regular times, we have the camp run Wednesday and Thursday afternoons. However, this past summer during the pandemic, we knew from prior experience that going bedside is really time consuming. So we planned ahead and we made our camp Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all day for those 8 weeks, okay? The next question to consider is, where will you set up camp, and are there any space limitations? So we're lucky enough here to have our own classroom that seats about 16 people at a time, plus we have a small library across the way for overflow. Also though, keep in mind that bedside portion, right? If next summer it's still not feasible to have a group of students in one area together, then you're going to have to consider going strictly bedside as we did this past summer. And then finally, the final initial question to consider is, who will be camp counselors, and do you need to recruit more people? So again, in regular times, Scott and I are the lead counselors. We're the school services coordinators, as we said. And then we have 4 academic educational liaisons that are here on staff as well. And we usually try to recruit 2 of them to help us out with camp. So those are some of your initial questions you're going to want to think through just to get those logistical details down. And once you have that, then you can start thinking about your themes, which is the fun part.
This is the fun part, like Katie just said. You want to select your themes. So we've had themes in the past anywhere from prehistoric party to camp kickoff to animal week to color me crazy. So the options are limitless, right? And so I've shown on the screen right now, you can see 3 of our most popular themes: camp kickoff, STEM week, and animal week. Now, these are 3 of our favorites that we often have every year. However, we do switch it up. And we do have a comprehensive list of different themes available in a field guide that we've created that's available, that Katie will tell you more about the end of our presentation. So taking a look at Camp Kickoff, that is the first week, and it always sets the tone for camp. We try to do traditional camp-like activities that kids would do if they were actually at camp. So we start by tie-dyeing pillowcases. And I have to say, it's incredible to see the kids' faces light up when you pull the pillowcase out of the bag and show them what their creation looks like.
It's so much fun. They're asking their parents right then and there, can we put it on my bed, please?
Exactly. And I have to say, we have a lot of kids that we call frequent flyers that come back for different treatments. And it's so exciting for us to walk in a room 3 weeks later when we see a student again and they have their pillowcase on their bed, ready and waiting for camp.
It's so sweet, and it really shows that camp is making an impact. It's making their summer fun, and that's all we want from camp.
Yeah, for sure. And so then we're going to talk about STEM week a little bit later in this presentation, but then let's talk about Animal Week. Animal Week is a highlight here because we often have visitors from the Shed Aquarium. So the last couple summers, they've brought penguins, baby sharks, jellyfish, snakes, and even a skunk, all right? Even a skunk. And the parents and the families just really love interacting with the animal handlers, asking lots of questions, really creating a true educational experience. So again, these are just 3 of our themes that we've chosen to highlight here, but we do have many more.
Exactly. And then after you kind of think through those themes, then you can narrow it down, choose 8 if your camp is going to be 8 weeks, and then from there, you need to break down into activities. So when you are planning your activities, you are going to want to make sure that the activities can go bedside. Now, for us this past summer, as we've mentioned, because of the pandemic, everything had to go bedside. But it's still important, even if you have a public space, like a classroom or a playroom that you're planning on holding your camp in, there's still undoubtedly going to be a population of isolated students. So we want to make sure that every student who wants to participate in camp can. And that means making sure that some of our activities, or all of them, are bedside compatible. So think through those logistical things. You know, is this just too humongous and there's no way I could do it bedside? Well, then maybe how could you adapt it to make it work at the individual bedside? Now, something else you're going to want to consider is, can the activities be adapted for various ages and skill levels? So we open up our camp to anyone kindergarten all the way up through senior year in high school. So that's a pretty big age span, right? So when you're thinking of those activities, try to make sure, is the activity something that a teenager would like to do just as much as an elementary school student might like to do? And if the answer is no, that's okay. There are going to be some activities that maybe are not interesting to that span. However, what can you do to make up for that? Can you, if camp is going to be held in the classroom, can you have a teenager help a younger student with that? Could you kind of foster that socialization? And if not, then do you have something that might be interesting to a teen that they could do alongside that younger student activity? So think through those things, because again, you really want to reach that whole age span for camp.
And you'd really be surprised. We have a really simple activity called the Engineering Challenge,
Yes.
which is blocks, cups, and popsicle sticks. At first we
That's
thought,
it.
who's going to be interested in this? But I have to tell you, the little kids love it, and the big kids, they challenge themselves. They're
They
like,
get
oh.
so competitive.
They get competitive,
And we
and-
have structures this high going on, and like, you know, you could hear a pin drop as they're putting the last piece on top. So it's really fun. And again, like Scott said, sometimes it really does surprise us what the teens are interested in. So try it, you know. You might not think that an older student would like this, but try it. And if they don't, have something that you can fall back on.
Exactly.
Okay, now something else that is crucial when planning your activities. You have to make sure that every single one of those activities, whether it's bedside or in the classroom, is compliant with your hospital's infection control protocol. So a lot of times, you know, whether it be a volunteer or one of our corporate sponsors, they come with these amazing ideas for activities. And they're like, okay, we need a latex balloon, we need a match, we need a candle. And we're like, whoa, 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 let's pump the brakes. We can't actually use many of those things, right? So you have to keep that infection control protocol in mind. And frankly, it's a lot better to have that in mind in the beginning than plan this amazing activity and find out after the fact that you actually cannot do it. So really make sure you are checking that. If you are not sure, ask. All right, now down here at the bottom of the slide, you'll see we have some of our favorite activities from different themed weeks. Scott already mentioned the engineering challenge. We've had flower crowns. Obviously, we can't use fresh flowers, so we used amazing silk flowers, which was really fun. And then I think one to mention is birthday cakes. Now that sounds like, wait, how in the world? And again, a lot of our students, they really miss out on that, like roasting marshmallows at camp or preparing trail mix all together and being able to eat it. Well, here at the hospital, we cannot have any food products for our students that they make or consume. So one of our students was really into having a birthday week for camp. We made that happen. It was really fun. And they wanted to make a birthday cake. So we were like, okay, how can we do this? So Scott had the amazing idea, he has a car, I don't, of getting those big sponges for your car wash, right? Those big yellow sponges. We took actually a turkey shaver, and we cut those into nice big slices, right? So it was a thick, spongy slice. Then what we did is we made a puffy paint concoction that we used as our frosting. We did some shaving cream and glue, whipped it up really well. Students were able to dye it different colors. Then for sprinkles, we used Model Magic and we had students paint them. Very time consuming, great for fine motor, but the students absolutely loved it. Then afterwards, they were able to frost their cake. They were able to do their sprinkles on it. For some of our older students, we even used bags and they piped icing onto it, right? Our pretend icing. And then, of course, a little fake birthday candle at the end. And what was so much fun about this activity was that A, it was completely homemade. B, it was completely compliant with our infection control protocol. And C, so many of the parents the next day came to us and they were like, I was tricked. I literally thought my child had brought back a slice of cake from somewhere. And I was like, you can't eat that. So it was really, really fun to see the students so enthusiastic about it. And again, you just have to get creative. Now, I mentioned something about homemade, right?
Yes, and that is a big thing for us. Is that
For sure.
In the past, when we've been planning our activities, We have tried to like maybe purchase different kits. Like we had periscopes that we bought, we had kaleidoscopes.
A rain stick that was particularly tragic. So we really try to shy away from ordering those pre-packaged craft kits.
Yes.
I know it sounds quick and easy, but don't do it. Really don't. We've found it's so much more successful to have our own homemade activities. So again, we still did a rain stick, we still did a periscope, but how can we create it? It might take a little more time, but frankly, it's so much better quality, it's much more cost effective, and the students are actually proud of it. The rain stick, for example, after they made it, it was junk, and we found so many of them in the trash can on the way out of the classroom. And that's not what we want from camp. We want it to be compelling and exciting and something that they're proud of to take away. So really make sure that you are going that homemade route. And the amazing thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No, there's tons of information, tons of resources that you can use. Also, our field guide also has a lot of examples of activities that we have created. It's a great resource as well that we're going to talk about again at the end. But yeah, think kitschy, think homemade, think fun, and there is some sort of element of pride in those activities.
Definitely.
All right, so one of the other things we mentioned earlier is that we really want kids to have the authentic camp experience. Including with that is we wanted to create a camp name and official camp logo. Our logo, first of all, our name was selected by members here at the hospital. We did a poll on our global email system, and then the design was actually created by a local artist that has done art throughout the hospital. So we're really proud of that. But then we took that logo, we put it on stationery, we put it on shirts. So every camper, every patient gets a shirt along with counselors, and we also pass out those shirts to staff to help promote camp as well. We've also added backpacks that are filled with that stationery that I mentioned and pencils. So the kids upstairs can actually write letters home from camp, and they can write letters to our sponsor. And then what's awesome is that our sponsor that we have, that we'll talk about a little bit later, actually writes the kids back. So there is this exchange, just like camp. You're writing letters home, and you have your shirt, you've got your logo, and people know who we are when we come to the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going along with that authentic experience that we're really trying to create for our students and families, that takes us into our transformation of the classroom. So with our classroom, you can see here in the pictures, right? This is the outer wall when you head in. We completely transform it. And again, you'll see that everything is homemade. And this really makes such a difference for our patients, our families, and even the staff that enters in. They're like, wow, it doesn't even look like the classroom anymore. And that's what we want. We really want to transport our students, take their minds off of everything else that's going on, and make it feel like a true escape when they come into the classroom for those 2 hours. Now, it might seem like, wow, that's a lot of work. Well, we don't need to do that. That's a completely unnecessary step. And I mean, we certainly get those looks from some people as we're, on our hands and knees measuring out huge construction paper. However, this really is the icing on the cake. And this is what parents, families, students remember, right? The amount of pictures we've seen families taking outside of the classroom, and what parents say is it really helped the child feel special. And that's what we want. That's why we do it.
Yeah, and this year, as you can see on the slide that's up on the screen right now, there is a wall outside of the classroom across from our windows. So we've added a whole mountain range with a little Airstream camper and a canoe. And it's great because when students are actually inside the classroom, they can look out through the windows and the illusion and the show is still intact. They feel like they're camping. And again, it's crafty and it's homemade, but there's something that's so pure and incredible about it that they really do feel transformed. Now, the changes aren't just to the outside of the classroom or the wall across it, it's also on the inside.
Exactly. So in here you can see this is our classroom. We've got the walls covered in construction paper to look like wood paneling. We've got our plaid curtains up. We have the cabinets covered with each themed week, a little cool drawing up there for that. And so we also have a mailbox inside that has our camp logo on it. And this is where that stationery that Scott mentioned earlier, students can stick it in there and we pretend mail it off. And they can receive mail in there. So again, how can you really create your space into that authentic camp feel? Now, this past summer, obviously, because of the pandemic, things were a little different. The classroom was closed. We could not have any students down there. So we had to get creative in how to still preserve that decor feel.
Yeah, so one of the things that we did is when we went bedside, we obviously had to bring all of our supplies with us, right? So because of the pandemic, everything had to be packaged individually. There were a couple shared items like tacky glue and scissors, which we had to figure out how to clean in between rooms. But we packaged it all in these incredible plaid bags, right? They really had a camp feel. We, of course, wore our shirts. Oftentimes, we wore these coonskin caps and bandanas. But we brought camp to their rooms. So even though they weren't able to come down to the classroom and see all the decorations, we really tried to transport them for at least an hour or 2 hours out of their day.
Absolutely. And something else that you saw, Scott mentioned the bags. We also had those really neat camp menu sheets. Now, this was kind of twofold. It helped give the students a visual, right? If you just pop your head into a room in the morning and say, hey, it's Animal Week. Okay, a student might not know what that looks like. What does Animal Week mean for camp? And I feel like these were especially important for our teen population because we could give them a really nice visual of what all those activities, experiments, everything were. And then from there, it got them more excited. They could choose, oh yeah, I want to start with this one. And plus, it really helped us with that safety and infection control piece because with like a craft project or a game, we can't bring that in and out of every single room without going through our entire cleaning process. So having this menu sheet was a perfect way to show that visual, let the students keep it. Then when we came back a little bit later, they told us, okay, first can you bring in this activity? Next, can you bring in this experiment? So that was a really nice way to make sure we kept everything clean, safe, and exciting for our students.
Yeah, and I have to say, a lot of students, maybe when you enter the room for the very first time, are almost a little hesitant. They're like, I don't know, sure, let's try this one activity right here. But then they go, oh wait, can we do this one? Can we do this one? Can we do this one? And you end up spending a lot of time with these students, which is why bedside takes a longer amount of time than when you're actually in the classroom. So the menu sheets were actually key, and I think it's something that we will continue to keep even after the pandemic when students can come down and we can go in and out of rooms as well.
Definitely. And those menu sheets really helped us to promote camp. And promoting camp is super important.
Yeah, so on the next slide, you will see how we kind of get the word out and spread the word about camp. We have global emails that go out to the entire hospital staff. So these are, executives, administrative assistants, nurses, doctors, medical teams, social workers, everybody gets these. So that's one way. However, we realize that some people don't always read these. So then we email individual floor teams who then spread the word to their staff as well. We put flyers in the waiting and family rooms. So not only does the hospital staff know about camp, but also the families will see and be like, hey, what is this? What's going on? And on those sheets, we also put what day we will be attending to their floor. So that way they can look forward to it and they know when we're coming.
You can plan ahead a little bit with their schedule.
Again, with our camp shirts, not only do the campers get them, but also some staff. We share those with child life specialists, some doctors, people who ask us who want one. We often give that to them because when they wear it, people are like, hey, what is Camp Urban Explorers?
It's free promotion.
Yeah, what is going on? Like, how do we get one of those? What is this? Tell us more about it. And so that really helps get the word out as well. And of course, word of mouth as well is another way that we really just spread the word about camp to make sure that everybody here in this facility knows what's going on.
And has an opportunity to participate.
Yes, anybody that wants to participate, we want to participate.
Exactly. Okay, so that's been a ton of information. So now you kind of have the backbone, right? The structure of camp. And as Scott has mentioned, we have an amazing field guide that really breaks all of those pieces down into further detail, and we are happy to share that. But for right now, let's talk about a timeline. So you have all your information, you kind of know what you need to do. Now, let's figure out a timeline that you need to do that in. So when it's 3 to 4 months prior, so technically you could still run a summer camp this summer, and we hope that you do. So 3 to 4 months prior, if this is your very first year of doing camp, you're gonna wanna think about a camp name, a logo, and t-shirts. And again, if t-shirts aren't in your budget this year, don't worry. We have plenty of other ideas for you of how you can still brand your camp, how you can still make it feel authentic. So if it's your first year, determine those couple things. Then, next, what you will want to do is brainstorm themes, okay? Again, we have a comprehensive list of themes, but think about your own interactions with students. What do they seem to like? Is there anything that's super hot and in style this summer? Go with that, right? Try it. And if you've done camp or something like camp before, reflect on your past themes. What worked? What didn't work? And really use that to drive your instruction for this summer. Then, you will want to discuss camp staffing. So who are you going to have as counselors? Do you have a co-teacher like Scott and I? Will you be the leads? Is there anyone else that can help you? Or is your facility small enough that you might not need extra help? Think about those things and start planning for it. And then finally, determine where camp will be held. If it looks like you're still going to have restrictions in place because of the pandemic this summer, then think about how you can go bedside. Make sure you get that checked with your infection control. If you can have it in a public area, what public area will you use? Do you have a classroom? Is there a playroom? So determine those things in that first 3 to 4 months of camp.
Okay, so then as we get a little bit closer and we're 2 months away, you want to make sure that at that point you start to finalize your themes. Pick which activities or which themes you're going to do and start brainstorming about activities. Because once we have our themes in place, we end up meeting about every 2 weeks with our camp staff, our counselors, as we begin to brainstorm those activities and kind of put it out there. And this is where you can talk through ideas and see, hey, does this meet the infection control protocol?
Exactly.
So many ideas come up that we're like, oh my gosh, that is a great idea, but we can't use latex. So what could we use in its place, right? This is where we brainstorm and we get creative. Then we also think about reaching out to community organizations and confirm maybe their participation. So think about your resources in your community. Like think museums, art museums, aquariums, cultural museums as well. We have had a variety of people, when we reach out to them, they are so excited about joining and helping collaborate with camp. They either send resources or pre-pandemic, they would actually come and help facilitate their activities live and in person. And that's how we got the Shed Aquarium to bring all those incredible animals, right?
And it's so much fun, and they honestly get so much out of it too. We still keep in touch with the Shed. We do things throughout the school year with them. And also it's a great way to foster that kind of continuing partnership. But anyway, every time we chat with them, they talk about how much fun they had at camp, how much they're looking forward to the next summer's camp. And with the pandemic, as Scott said, you had to get a little creative, but they're willing to, and as long as you're willing to get creative and put in the work, it's going to be an amazing experience.
Yeah, and like Katie said, they keep reaching out to us now to participate in camp in the future, which is great, because it's a win-win for them as well. They are getting exposure to families, or families are getting exposure to them that may not have ever heard of some of these places or get the opportunity to visit in person. So it really is a great experience. So don't hesitate, don't be afraid to reach out. They're more than willing to help out than you think. All right, then we also set up a meeting with our camp sponsors. We are lucky enough to have sponsorship. A company called Slalom Consulting has sponsored us the last couple years. And with that, they like to participate. They pick 2 or 3 weeks that they come up with some of the activities, they brainstorm with their staff, and then they send us ideas. So we set up a meeting again to make sure that their activities that they're thinking or they would like us to do or how we can collaborate are all within the infection control protocol. That's key. They come up with some amazing ideas. Their staff loves camp, but again, we can't always do that here in our facility. So again, we have to get creative to think how we can take their activities and sort of meld and mesh them together with what's acceptable. And then finally, this would be the time that you order camp t-shirts and any accessories that you need to make sure they're here on time for camp kickoff. Okay, so now you are 1 month prior. It is almost go time.
you need to really solidify those activities for each themed week, okay? Nail those down, and we found it to be helpful if you have multiple counselors, assign each of them a couple of those weeks to be the lead on, right? They can be the point person. They're in charge of ordering the supplies. They're in charge of teaching everyone else how to do each of the activities. We found that this just helps keep things organized and manageable for everybody. All right, then if you have a corporate sponsor or community partners, you're going to want to nail down their activities and their partnership. When are they coming? How does that look? Kind of have a follow-up meeting and really solidify that. Next, you'll want to order supplies. So we're talking your construction paper, your glue sticks, your popsicle sticks, all those things. Place a bulk order. Then you don't have to worry about it. You're not scrambling at the last minute. You can be calm and collected. You're going to want to train any additional camp staff. So who else is going to be a counselor? What do they need to know? We have a really great manual for that if you need pointers. Then you'll want to start thinking about decorating the classroom. You don't need to put everything up yet, but Scott and I love to storyboard. Yes. We are big storyboarders. So think about, do you want a mountainous escape? Do you want really wooded with wildlife? Do you want more of a plains and maybe a soft river, right? Think about those things. How are you going to decorate that space? Measure it out. Get that in your head, okay?
And as teachers, think about this. It's like creating a giant bulletin board that you want to live inside of, right?
Exactly.
This is your opportunity to go big and get creative.
This is one of our favorite parts of camp planning. It's just a ton of fun, and if you're crafty like us, it doesn't even seem like work, right?
And we actually often invite our sponsors to come help.
That's
true. We make it a party. We block off a morning of time. They come, and it takes half the amount of time because we've got double the amount of people.
Exactly. All right, so decorate your space. You'll want to create camp rosters. Make sure that you have photo consent forms ready to go, and then make sure you have that statistics spreadsheet ready. Keeping statistics is so important. And then finally, just start promoting camp. Get it in people's ears. Make sure people know about it.
Yes, and so then we're getting even closer.
Yep.
Now we are 1 week out. This is the time that you start assembling those activity packets to go bedside or even in the classroom. You want to create the activity menu sheets, troubleshoot the handling of shared supplies. So for example, scissors, tacky glue, those are items that we can't individually package for students because we can't leave them in their rooms. So we have to figure out the policy or the procedure that we're going to do as we go in and out of rooms to clean them in between students to make sure we follow infection protocol. And finally, as always, continue to promote camp hospital-wide. Get the word out, right?
Absolutely. All right, friends, you've made it. You've done all the planning. You've marked everything off that timeline checklist, and it is day 1 of camp.
Go time.
You are excited. You are nervous. It's here, camp. All right, so what does a typical day look like? So Scott and I have kind of broken this down into pre-pandemic and then pandemic times. So I'll take the first one, which is our pre-pandemic, back when we had camp happening both in the classroom and at the bedside. So camp was going for 2 afternoons a week during those times. So on a typical camp day, in the morning, we'd spend that time kind of prepping and setting up. Scott and I would go around to each of the students' rooms, we'd share the theme, and we'd gauge their interest in camp. We'd really try to encourage it, even for students that were kind of like, not sure. We'd say at least do 1 activity and then you can make a decision. So we'd determine if those students were able to come down to the classroom. If they were, we would set that up with their nurse, make sure their parents knew, make sure they know the timing, how they're getting down here. Have that all covered, right? All bases covered for students actually coming down to the classroom. Then for our bedside patients, maybe they were on isolation or they just couldn't come down that day. We would make sure we would take their name, we'd give them the time frame so they could expect us, and we'd write that down so that when we were preparing our camp rosters for later, we have all those students set up neat and nice. All right, we'd come back to the classroom, we'd set up those camp bags for our bedside portion, make sure they're packed with the appropriate number of materials, have a quick bite of lunch, and then it's the afternoon. Okay, now this is where things get busy. We'd make sure those camp rosters were prepared, and whichever counselors were going bedside, whether it be Scott and I or someone else, we would make sure that those people are off on their way. they're good to go. They know that they've got their camp roster. On there, they're going to record how long they spent with each student, what activities those students did. They're going to get that all down. Then in the classroom, we want to make sure that we have all the activities set up in specific areas, okay? The classroom can get a little hectic, especially if it's a popular themed week. So the way we operate is we have it kind of as a rolling, come in when you want, leave when you want. We really want this to be accessible for all students. So we have to make sure that counselors know all the activities and that they know we have to make sure every student who comes in, we want to get their name, we want to give them a nice squirt of hand sanitizer, and we want to get them started right away with something. So we have to make sure that we're really diligent about tracking those students in the classroom too. How long did each student spend in there? What activities did they do? We want to make sure that all counselors are recording that information. All right, now in pandemic times, we had to switch that up a little bit.
And also don't forget, on a typical camp day, you have to leave time to clean up at the end of the day.
For sure, on every camp day, pre-pandemic and pandemic. So don't plan to end your camp at 5 p.m. You will never get out of here by 5:30. Trust us, it takes forever to clean and input all those stats.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what camp was like during the pandemic where it was strictly bedside. I would say that the biggest difference we had, because we know bedside takes longer with each student, we actually operated camp for 3 days in both the morning and the afternoon. So in the morning time, we would assign inpatient floors to our various camp counselors. We would review the activities, pack the bags, and then send the counselors on their way. And that includes Katie and I. We would go out on the floor as well. So all morning long, you were working with those students, you were recording your stats, then you would take a break at lunchtime, restock and pack your bag up again, and then after lunch, go back out on the floor and see those kids. Yep. Again, so important to keep track of the stats, because there were a couple kids that wanted to do activities, didn't get to complete them, or had to go for a procedure that really wanted to do them, so we would pick them up the next day as like an overflow. So it is an exhausting day, it's a long day, and you are tired at the end. So you want to make sure that you get a good night's sleep on each of those 3 nights leading up to camp.
For sure. So that's our typical day. Exhausting, but so much fun.
All right, let's take a closer look at one of our favorite weeks, STEM Week. As you can see for STEM Week, there are 8 activities listed. And 6 of those activities, the ones with the asterisk after, are activities that are able to go bedside. Now, that's important because we have that bedside portion, but when the classroom is open, pre-pandemic and hopefully after pandemic, we offer more activities because students are so excited. Campers are so excited to be in the space that they cycle through things a little bit faster. They want to do more and more activities. And so we offer more activities in the classroom. But the activities that we offer bedside make sure that those students that are in isolation are still getting the same camp experience and that theme.
Definitely.
Yes. All right. Now, one of our favorite activities from STEM Week is a DIY closed circuit flashlight, which you can see on the screen right now. It is a concept of simple circuits, and it creates a functioning flashlight. What are the materials?
We will need copper tape, popsicle sticks, LED lights, batteries, and electrical tape. And we're actually going to bring you through a demo of that now. All right, so this is a great example of how to package your DIY flashlight. If you're doing it bedside, or sometimes we found that it's easy to just have them pre-packaged for the classroom too. So everything you'll need is in here, except the only shared material that you will need is the electrical tape and the scissors. So make sure that you have cleaning wipes with you. If you are going bedside with this, that you can clean these 2 shared materials between each room. So as we mentioned, you will have 3 popsicle sticks in here. You want to choose one of them to start with. So I'm going to start with my red, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this strip of copper tape in here, and it's got a nice peel away backing, okay? So you'll peel a little bit away. Now we tell students not to peel the whole thing away at once because it really coils, okay? So peel a little bit away, and what you'll want to have your students do is put 2 rings that go completely around the base of one of your popsicle sticks. All right, you want to leave about a finger's width in between each of those. All right, so rule of thumb, you can kind of use a thumb. Start your first ring right here. Again, make sure it goes around and connects. You don't need to do it multiple times, you just want it to touch. Finger space, and then do the same thing. All right, now on another popsicle stick, you will want to run a piece of copper tape just straight down the length of it. You're not going to do it on the reverse side, just on the one side, straight down the length. Okay?
I think it's also important to say that the copper tape rips very easily, so it's not like you need scissors to cut it off or measure it perfectly.
Exactly. All right, so next thing you will do, you have your red stick, whichever color, you've got your 2 rings around it. Now you'll want to take a piece of copper tape and run it from one ring to the bottom, and then from the opposite ring to the top. So your stick should look like this, okay? You've got one strip of copper tape going to the bottom and one going back up to the top. Again, you're not going to put it on the back, only those 2 rings from the very first step. So you're right here, okay? Now, this is where it does get a little tricky. Your LED light comes in here, and what you will want to do is those LED lights, they have these nice bendable legs. So what you will do is you need to take one of those legs and put it the length of one of your copper tape strips, okay? So if you can see, we've got the leg running the length here. Now, this is where you might need to help your students out a little bit, because what they have to do is take a piece of copper tape, and again, probably only about this long, and they need to tape directly over that, securing that leg of the LED light in place, okay? Now, for time's sake, we have one done for you. So your popsicle stick should look like this now. You've got one of those LED lights, right, the leg of it taped on. Now you're going to have to flip and get the other leg on to your other popsicle stick. Now, it's important to mention that you want those strips down at the bottom, okay? So again, you're going to have to, it might take a little finessing, it's a little tricky, but you and your student can work through it together.
And this is also a great opportunity and a time to talk about a closed circuit. If the student is a little bit older, you can get into that higher level science concepts, right? And you can talk about where the circuit is still open, where we need to close it. So it provides a lot of opportunities for talking points. Now, if you're a younger camper or a student, they may not have experienced what a closed circuit is or learned about closed circuits yet. So in a way, you can sort of explain it in a very simplistic terms, and they can see it brought to life right here.
Exactly. So now your LED should look like this. One leg fastened to one popsicle stick, the other leg fastened to the other, copper tape right over the top, okay? So we're going to just gently leave this here. And now your third popsicle stick is going to come into play. Now, we would highly recommend that you have an adult, like the counselor, or if the student is old enough, the student themselves do this. But you will need to cut your popsicle stick about this far off. Mine just broke here, but that's okay. I will cut it again. That's why it's great to always have extra. So let me grab out my other blue stick that I have in here. Again, you want to cut about that thumb length again, okay? Try and do one quick snip. Perfect. All right, so now you have 2 pieces like this. You'll need to take a piece of copper tape and run it from the tip of your blue stick down to the bottom, okay? Again, you only want it on the one side, and this is actually going to serve as your switch. So let's get this on here. There we go. All right, so this is your switch now. Okay? So what you'll do is on the outside, right? If you close this up, you're going to want to fasten your switch on with the electrical tape. Okay, so I'm going to leave these two pieces here. I'm going to get a piece of my green electrical tape. And it's just nice to kind of fasten this on and get it out of the way. So cut this off. And again, you want it to hinge because you want to think of it like a switch. So here we go. I'm going to put my green tape just right on top. Again, afterwards, we'll have plenty of time to secure. But now you see how I've created a switch, right? Okay, friends, now for the exciting part. With the other part of that popsicle stick that you had, right, that you cut off of, you're going to stick that in the middle, and that's going to be kind of like your brace, okay? And now comes the battery.
Ooh, I hope this works.
I hope so too. Sometimes it takes a couple tries and that's okay, right? With science, we always tell our students, it might not work out the first time. Don't panic, it is okay. So we are going to now sneak our battery into where that other stick left the gap, okay? So let's stick it right here. Secure it with your fingers for now. Close your switch down and look at that. We have a functioning flashlight. When we take that switch off, it's off. When we press down, there we go. So now we have to make sure that we get all of this secured in place. So I'm going to gently lay this down. And now we're going to get more of our electrical tape. Now, if it pops apart, that's okay because it's going to be the experience all over again, re-securing that battery. So I often find that it's easiest if I tape these couple ones up at the top first. Just get those secured in place. So I'm going to just run my electrical tape. And this, again, it doesn't matter. You can do as many times around as you would like. I like to keep it a little bit tight. So there we go. Those sticks are secured in place up top. I'm going to stick my battery in. Now it's important to mention that the way the battery is facing will affect if it works. So this way I put it in correctly, but here, just for demonstration's sake, let's see if I did this way. I'm pressing down and it's not working. And this actually is often really fun because if students happen to put it in upside down, they're like, oh, it doesn't work. But then you tell them to switch it, they try again, and voila, and you should see the look on their faces. It's amazing. So then the last part that you really need to make sure that you secure tightly and safely is the battery at the bottom. So cut off another nice strip of electrical tape, and then you're gonna go around here on the bottom, and you really wanna make sure that that battery is getting secured in place. So we're gonna do a couple this way, and then one more at the very bottom, so that it can't slide out from under here. And then, friends, you've got yourself a working DIY flashlight. So one more here for good measure. And there we go. Enjoy this. Your students will love it.
All right, we have talked fast. We have shared a lot. We know why we create a camp and how to start planning a camp. But you may be thinking, wait a second, how much does this cost? Who's going to pay for this? How are we going to afford this, right? So we took a look at our budget and we've shared this with you today. The numbers that you see on the screen are actually an average from camp for the summers of 2019 and 2020. The average total expenses for us was $2,688. Now, that sounds like a lot, but if you look at the breakdown, the majority of our cost actually comes from the t-shirts and the backpacks. Now, is that something you need to start your camp? No, not at all.
It's not necessary. So don't let that deter you. We have plenty of creative ideas for you, which you can find in our field guide. But just think about it. If you took those two expenses out, camp would be even more cost effective.
That's true. And even with those, the t-shirt and the backpack, the average cost per camper per summer is only $5.60, which is a bargain.
Amazing,
You get
truly.
8 weeks of entertainment for $5.60. That's incredible.
And it is so worthwhile for these students. We promise you it is worth every penny to see the smiles,
Yes.
to hear the parents say that they are so happy their child was still able to have an amazing, fun, engaging summer.
And now I guess it's time to wrap this up, right? All right, so it doesn't matter how big or small your camp is, right? It's about how you adjust to what fits your facility the best. Maybe start out small and each year get a little bit bigger. This is just what works for our facility here. All
But
right?
we really want you to adapt camp to your own hospital, right? So as Scott said, if you can only start off with 1 week and you're the only counselor, reach out to us. We can help you plan for that.
Don't reinvent the wheel. We have a
Exactly.
ton of activities and prepackaged, and we also created this incredible field
This
guide.
amazing field guide, friends. It has so much information in it. It is lengthy, but we promise you it is worth it. We have resources about how to obtain corporate sponsorship, how to reach out to those community partners, different activities. We've got pullouts for your statistics sheet, menu sheets, all of those amazing items. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We are here to help you, and we want to share these with you. Again, reach out to us with any questions. We have our Gmail listed, campandlearn@gmail.com. We've got an Instagram, lots of fun activities that you can check out on there. But please connect with us. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to make camp a success at your hospital this summer.
All right. Well, thank you for watching us today. We had a blast. This was so much fun, and we really wish you the best of luck. And please reach out to us with any questions. And
And have a great summer and go camp.